Hi, today I'm going to read you an excerpt from The Remembrance Quilt by Kathleen Ann Butler. At the top it says, Kara has had the chicken pox and needs to stay with her great-grandmother because her regular babysitter cannot care for sick children. Kara is worried about spending time with great-grandmother because she can be very old-fashioned and she rarely smiles. All right, we're ready for paragraph 1. Soon after the front door closed behind Aunt Liz, great-grandmother came into Kara's room, supported on a cane and peering over her bifocals. "So you're sick," was all she said. Then great-grandmother slowly went to the closet and pulled out a quilt, which she brought to Kara's bed. "When your mother was a little girl, she always wanted the fan quilt and a story when she was sick. Maybe you'll like the same." Kara, too surprised to say anything, lay still as great-grandmother unfolded the colorful fan quilt and carefully spread it over Kara, covering up all the homework. "It is beautiful," Kara finally managed to say. "Is it old? Did my mother really sleep under it? Did she have the chicken pox too?" Kara was startled when great-grandmother started to laugh. "Yes, to all of your questions," she said, as she eased herself into a chair next to Kara's bed. "I was born in the old country, you know," started great-grandmother. Kara listened eagerly as the old woman continued. "My great-grandmother, who I called Farmore, was a very successful weaver. She raised her own flax, spun it, dyed it, and wove it into beautiful pieces of cloth. She worked at her loom many hours every day. I can still hear the sound of the wooden treadles and the beater pushing woof threads firmly into the warp." Great Mother stopped and looked. Oh, I gotta wait just a second for this to disappear. And looked at the quilt as if in a dream. Finally, Kara said, "What are woof and warp?" Great-grandmother smiled, looking now at Kara's face. "The warp is the string that is strung on the loom. The woof is the yarn woven between the threads of warp." She held the corner of the quilt to show Kara where the red and green yarns had been woven between the white warp threads. People from all over the country came to buy Farmore's cloth. It was so fine. One day Papa told Farmore that he, Mama, my sister, and I would be leaving for America. Farmore cried. I cried too because somehow I knew I would never see her again. I'd never see the beautiful cloth she wove or hear the beating of her busy loom again. So I did something very bad. I went into Farmore's weaving room the night before we left for America. I took a pair of scissors and snipped a scrap from every bolt on her shelves. No one knew I did it. They were all so busy packing for the journey. I rolled the scraps of material into a small bundle and packed them into the bottom of my own little trunk. Many weeks later, at our new home in America, I unpacked my precious scraps of cloth. Tears were glistening on great-grandma's cheeks now. When Papa and Mama discovered what I had done, they were very angry at first. They made me write an apology to Farmore. But then Mama helped me make a remembrance quilt of all the scraps I had taken. Every time I would take it out, even after all those years, I can still see Farmore. I think she would have been very happy to know that I have such a lovely memory of her." Great-grandmother dabbed her handkerchief to her eyes. Kara sat very still thinking. Then she slid her hand out from under the quilt and shyly reached for grandmother's soft white hand. "Thank you for telling me your story," she whispered. "It was nice to know great-grandmother had been a little girl once like her." Now, this is the question for the the response or the passage. It says, "Why is the quilt special? What are the ways people in the family have used the quilt? Use details from the story to support your response. In your response, be sure to 1. Explain why the quilt is special. 2. Describe the way people in the family have used the quilt. And 3. Use details from the story to support your response." And those are the questions.